We're gonna call the meeting to order. It's 6:02. And I wanted to read a little something before we approve the minutes. It's something that I wrote myself, and it is as follows. The select board meetings are open business meetings for the duly elected members to facilitate town business. Members of the public are not only allowed, but are encouraged to attend. During meetings, the board, and when called upon, members of the public will engage in civil discussion of town matters. Personal comments are not welcome. Personal attacks will not be allowed. Under new business on this agenda, we will discuss rules of procedure to adopt. It's my sincere hope that we will all conduct town business in a professional and kind manner. So, now we will go on to approving the minutes from March 26th. I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Second? Okay. Connie, you've made some packets for the audience if they choose to look, correct?
I believe, yep, I believe folks have gotten it.
Thank you.
Do we go over each item or just wait for any comments?
You're gonna peruse the last thing we do.
Excuse me?
You have a vote on the table. Can't move forward without that.
We have a motion on the table to approve, so just being no discussion, then you just go ahead and take the vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so now,
Abstentions.
any abstentions?
One.
Now, do we have discussion on said minutes?
No, no, take the vote.
Okay. Okay, the warrants will be read for us.
Okay, the warrants are as follows. For payroll, the amount of $13,809.84. For payroll taxes, $3,923.81. For the general fund, $12,303.73. General fund, separate items, $8.19. The highway fund, $14.34. Highway fund, second item, $16,050.33. Highway equipment for $9,335.92. This is a total of $55,446.16.
So Kate, you usually make the motion.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the warrants, pay the warrants.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
It's gone too far. There's no discussion. We need the discussion after the second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The treasurer's report, I will give you,
I'm sorry to interrupt. There was members of the public and correspondence.
oh, okay.
And we don't have any correspondence, but you may want to see if there's anybody, member of the public.
Okay. Any members of the public? Yes.
Yeah, Amy. So I'm basically speaking to something that happened at the last select board meeting where I was basically personally attacked. Katie Morrow said that I supported the proposal that she made at the select board meeting of the 27th. And I said that I did not, and she argued with me and said it was on the video, and yes, I did support the proposal. So I went back to the video, and at 56 minutes and 23 seconds, Sherwood asked me if I had anything to say, and I said no, and he said, really? And that was the end of the conversation. So how that could be construed as my agreeing with the proposal, I have no idea. And basically, I feel that I was personally attacked and called a liar. by Kate Morrow, and that is not appropriate behavior. I do not warrant that. And if you're gonna just tell people to go look at the video, maybe you ought to do it yourself first. So I would like an apology, because I was called a liar, basically, on camera and during a public meeting by you.
Well, I will watch the video and then we can talk about it again.
It's at 56:23.
Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
Any other members of the public?
1676 Windermere Road, Sean Morrow. I've watched the video, and if you've been in meetings, which you have, and people have watched videos of you, if you are quiet, it is usually a yes. Because normally, you are a strong person and you speak your opinion. And when you don't have an answer to that opinion, you say no. And my wife doesn't lie. Sorry to bring in marriage into this, but my wife doesn't lie. You silently agreed or disagreed to the position. And you're making a big deal about something that's going to help the town. And you're making it personal for absolutely no reason.
I did not make it personal.
You just did. You made it personal
I
with the
did not
person
make
on the select board. You made it completely personal.
Well, if you
You
want,
went ad hominem on something that we have been in meetings with you before. I have sat here and you will argue to the tooth about what you want. And if you don't want something, are you silently agreeing then? Is that what you're doing?
Point
So now we're
of
going to throw someone
order.
under the bus because
Point
you can't
of
accept.
order.
There's no point of order. She is going to throw someone under the bus because she feels slighted. When she's the first one to speak up, do you think I'm not giving you credit? You are an active member of the town. You do exactly what you're supposed to do at the time. And this time, did you fail yourself, or did you fail the select board, or did you fail the town? No, that didn't happen.
End of discussion.
I don't agree, but
Well-
we can move on.
I would just like to state that on the meeting that I'm referring to, on minute 24:16, you can watch what Katie said and did, and you tell me what you think
Okay.
of that interaction.
If I may just make a comment,
Yes.
staying silent is not the same thing as agreeing with something, and that's really all I have to say to that. You know, yes, Laura has a lot of opinions, and we welcome that because we want our townsfolk to be engaged in discussions, but if they don't have anything to say, that is not the same thing as saying, I support this.
Okay, well, saying yes or no.
No, but that's okay.
Having an
There's not
opinion,
much more to
yes
discuss
or
there.
no,
It's
and
simply you
not
were just yelling at our
makes you
fellow
have an opinion.
resident for not having an opinion at a time. So I think we can just lay that.
Liza.
I have a question, moving away from this discussion. I would like to know if this select board has decided on some form of governing them, for instance, Robert's rules, and if not, what do you all use?
I can speak to that. Later on tonight's agenda, we're going to be selecting between Vermont League of Cities and Towns model for that or Robert's Rules.
And
So that's on the agenda.
And I'll also add to that, I'm not sure we're presenting the two options for us to look at and decide, but it might not happen tonight.
Might not happen, right.
But we're
On
going
the
to
agenda.
try to have civil meetings that benefit the town until
Yeah.
that time. Does that answer your question,
Yes,
Liza? It is, it was mentioned in here in my little blurb, and then we have it as an agenda item. Correspondence?
There is
No correspondence? Okay. Warrants?
We did the warrants. The
And
bids, do we do bids now?
highway?
I know, but we do the bids when we talked about Bridge 17.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice.
Okay.
So I think we're on to
And
reports.
the reports, the highway report?
Not much to report, other than hopefully we've seen our last bit of snow for the year.
You said that.
Storm has not been fun to plow. Fortunately, we did not have any breakdowns this past storm, the storm before we did, so, but we got through it, so. now we're on to bigger and better things, get the road smoothed out, and hopefully the nice weather's here to stay.
Well, we'll hold you to that. Okay, treasurer, we get this nifty little M&T bank statement that has two balance totals. The first one is $714,905.42, and the second one is $30,000 even. So, and then the town clerk. The town clerk brought in $1,379.50. And then we go down to 8B, hiring the attorney. Where do we stand on that, Connie?
At the end of the last meeting, it was raised that Rob Wright thought that Stephen Duca may have had a conflict of interest type scenario. Sherwood at the time said he didn't think it was Duca, he thought it was Rich Carroll. And then Helen, who dealt with that same case, pointed out that it was Rich Carroll. So, after doing that investigation, it appears that there wasn't a conflict of interest with Stephen Duca. So I think where we're at now is we've done the research that was asked at the last meeting. So this meeting, it would just be giving me the authority to contact Stephen Duca.
To be on board if needed.
I make a motion that we ask Connie to inquire with Stephen Duca about his interest in.
Well, she already has done that, right? He is interested in.
He is interested.
So that we retain him without a retainer, really.
Okay, there's no retainer. Okay.
Yeah.
And I so move that we retain Mr. Duca as the town attorney for use when needed.
Correct. A second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we're on to the Stone Arch Bridge railings. Connie and
summarize, will you summarize where we're at?
with the railings?
Well,
Sure,
there's two things.
sure.
At one of the previous select board meetings, we had two tasks that we came out with. One was to talk to VLCT about any concerns about the railings. And the second one was to meet with the contractor to see if he could look at reducing costs in some fashion. So we engaged VLCT. They came out and looked at the bridge with Jeremy, and they basically came back and said that it's not their purview. They believe that the town has sufficient liability coverage and that they don't really deal with railings on bridges. So that's where VLCT was at. Jeremy maybe can give some more information on that.
Yeah, we said that basically he cannot tell us what we're required to have, but he can make suggestions. He looked over the plans and thought that, it would be fine. I did learn that the structure itself is not insured. The other question he had was who is insuring it during the project. And I wasn't sure if that was under us, the contractor, so, so that's where we're at there. He had no issue with us doing what we were doing, so.
The issue of actually insuring the structure, I think, is similar to the other bridges in town. And I don't know if we insure those individually either, so.
They're not.
I'm not sure if this is.
None of them are insured.
Yeah.
They're insured for liability, accidents, stuff like that. But if the bridge falls into the water, that's on us.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the roads. If we have those washouts, it's not, our insurance company doesn't cover any of that.
Yeah.
It's done by basically recouping from FEMA if we get enough damage.
So then the second thing we were instructed to do, Katie volunteered to meet with Brian Post. Jeremy was at the meeting as well as I, to have a conversation about how to reduce the cost of the railings. And we asked him, he said he'd be willing to do a new design. He did, it's in your packet, and it has been reduced.
Yeah, and he said he might even be able to go lower.
It was a good meeting. He's working with, but not fully charging us for a structural engineer to look at the designs.
And we also reiterated to him that what the board had decided previously, which was that we trusted his opinion. We knew he was consulting with an engineer, but that we knew that he was going to come up with something for us. At first, when I first asked him for another option per our previous conversations, he was feeling like it was going to push things behind by going back and checking with the engineer and everything. And Connie reminded him of the board's previous decision that we trusted his opinion and his designs, and if he could give us something where he could reduce costs in any way possible, we would appreciate that, and he was able to do that. And I looked it over, I think. Jeremy, what do you think of it?
I think it's sufficient. I mean,
Yeah, I think it's a good option. You know, I liked the other one, but I think that this one seems strong and capable.
it'll be, I mean, in all reality, it's gonna have a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit. I mean, anybody goes off that bridge, in my opinion, deserves to go off that bridge. Mostly the railings are probably there for pedestrian traffic anyways, so the design is sufficient in my eyes.
This is a discussion that we can have now.
Oh, well, we should make a motion and have a discussion, right?
So,
I think the motion is to approve his railing design and quote would be the motion.
and his
then the
suggestion
discussion.
was to not exceed this amount because he does think that he might be able to come in. He's still got a couple numbers to crunch. So he has assured us it's not gonna go over this amount, but it could go under this amount. So if we wanted to leave it as to not exceed this amount, that might
Would
be
you
the
like to
best way to
make the
go.
motion since you spoke with him?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to accept Brian Post's, is this an amendment, Connie? Would you call this an amendment or
Revised.
revised?
Revision?
To accept Brian Post's revised railing design not to exceed $52,500.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Well, I think we have
Now
to
it's a
discuss.
discussion.
Yes, I have a question. Jeremy, you basically said that, or Connie, both of you, said that the insurance company, the insurers don't really have an opinion, or V-Trans has basically no opinion regarding, it was the insurance company, regarding
Both have said
railings.
that it's not their purview.
Yeah, that they have no opinion regarding railings or not railings. And then you said that the railings are largely pertaining to pedestrian traffic, that they're given the speed limit that, so.
Plus the design of the travel deck, there's an 8-inch granite curb that's gonna run parallel with the bridge, so that's more for the cars and the trucks. And, I mean, the railing will have some, it should have enough structural ability to keep a car from going off if it's doing its 5-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Okay.
So
So my question, just for general discussion and because it needs to be asked, what is the requirement, from whence comes the requirement that we have a railing at all?
I think that's the Historical Society and the National Park Service grant.
So we would nullify the grant if we don't have the railings.
I believe
That was my
that's
understanding.
my understanding.
Yeah, and they did say that, like, we could have some sort of temporary option while we came up with this, but that scenario could and most likely would result in us tearing up good work in order to fulfill the requirements
No, I
later.
understand that, and the value of having the structure, the scaffolding up there in place to do the work, et cetera. And are these monies coming out of the highway budget? And is that already budgeted in?
20,000 of it is.
20,000, so 32,500 would come from where?
you guys would have to decide that.
When the Historical Society presented at town meeting that $50,000, they were sure that they wouldn't need the entire $50,000. So it was anticipated that we'd use whatever was left over to this project. So,
This railing project.
the railing project.
So.
Because we knew when we said $20,000, we were gonna come up short. But moving, adding 30% to the town tax rate for the year wasn't something that we wanted to do. So with this, adding this $50,000, whatever's left over from what the Historical Society needs to get to their goal, was intended to go to this railing project.
Okay, so you went from 20 to 50, so it's possible that, so 20,000 of this would be coming out of the highway budget, and it's possible that some additional 10, 20 grand would be coming back
It's anticipated.
from that, anticipated from that. So the actual new costs of monies that are coming out of the town's budget or savings is going to be in the realm of 20,000 instead of 52,000.
Well, it was already decided when it went to budget that $20,000 was locked in.
Okay,
At that time, we were looking at a $90,000 railing system, and it got sent back to the contractor we're not doing $90,000. So this is where it's worked to down to about half.
okay. Okay, thank you for all those clarifications. I understand the bind of needing to have railings in order to fulfill the purpose, to the requirements of the grant. And we're doing that knowing that, in fact, we're doing that freely, and that we're under no necessary requirement to have railings on all bridges. Okay. Thank you. Alan?
Okay, yes.
I've heard the words design and engineering mentioned, and in a previous select board meeting, I asked a question about professional liability insurance for errors and omissions. That's what's required when you have licensed professionals doing design and engineering work. So when I asked that question, it was posed in terms of an attorney reviewing it. Rob Wright told me if there were red flags, the attorney would have gotten back to us. Sherwood told me we'd look into it. So the question remains, do we have coverage for this work?
If you'd like to see the copy of the contract, you may have already seen
I
it.
did, and professional liability errors and omissions was not in there, it was crossed out. Now, was that crossed out by an attorney? I believe the answer is no.
No, there has not been an attorney that reviewed it.
So to the select board, what kind of insurance do you have for this project?
My understanding is that the contractor covers a lot, he has a certain amount of liability insurance that he produced a document for, and that
But he's doing design and engineering work on this bridge.
and having.
Design.
His certificate of insurance does not have errors and omissions on it.
Right.
Didn't look like it to me, it looked like it was crossed out.
Can you speak to whether that was, why that was crossed out, Sherwood?
Never saw it. They're under regulations from the federal government because there's a federal grant. The federal government is going to be monitoring this whole situation. There's state entities that were involved, and this particular company specializes in historic, what do you call it?
Restoration.
There you go, thank you. And it was felt that the insurance, our insurance company will cover our liability, but they they went through the project, they went through the program with each stage of this approval process, and if they're happy with it, there's no reason to start playing around with it. I will say that this project has been ongoing for 7 years. The Historical Society has put in a huge amount of work. Meetings that I was involved in for the Selectboard in publicly announced meetings, legal meetings. There was ample opportunity to come up with these questions before the contract was signed. And it wasn't until the contract was signed that all of a sudden we now have this issue moving forward. So honestly, I think they're covered. If they weren't covered, the feds wouldn't let it go through.
Right, it's the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of other things at play. There's fisheries, they talk to every tribe. There's a lot of elements
Oh yeah, you
to
can't
it.
touch
And
it.
there's been a lot of hoops to jump through and
One of the
okays to
things-
get, including the Corps of Engineers. There's just a lot of government oversight in this.
We had it all set to go until they found historic mud, and now that cost a considerable amount of money to be able to put that back, because they have to put it back in the same formula that it comes out. So, chemists don't do things cheap. But fortunately, that was all covered. The other thing is the Historical Society had raised privately an enormous amount of money to put to this. So this has been in the works for a long time, and there's been a lot of input on it. So.
Does that address the errors and omissions, or should we look into that
The
specifically?
contract has already been signed, I think
Right,
that.
but I mean, whether we're covered for errors and omissions at all through,
Errors and omissions by the contractor.
yeah.
But the
or-
You
contractors
can
should-
ask, certainly you can ask, but at this stage, the project is on its way.
I realize that, but one of our townspeople has brought it up, so I thought maybe we should honor that question and get an answer.
I do
Yeah,
feel like
been asked
Brian Post
before.
is pretty accessible, so I'm sure that he can answer that pretty quickly. I do think, I can't speak for the entire board when we did make the decision to accept the contract, but I can speak for myself as a member of that board. And I felt satisfied with the amount of government agencies involved in this project and the hard work of the Historical Society and, Jeremy's input, the different working pieces of this, that we were signing on to something solid that was going to benefit the town, and that's why I chose to approve.
Yeah, thank you.
So you say
Absolutely.
that Brian Post is pretty accessible.
Oh, definitely.
Could I offer an amendment to the motion that would be, that Katie Morrow will ask for clarification and report back to the public at the next meeting regarding?
I think that's two different issues.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Railings versus the contract.
You can set the original motion on the table and go with the new one. If you want somebody checking in, you just agree or vote to table this motion that's in progress, go to what you were talking about, and then pick it up next meeting. It's simple.
I'm concerned about the timeline.
Right, we asked him for this within days because they're supposed to start in May.
Is it a bifurcated issue? We want the railings,
Right.
but we also want to make sure that we have errors and omissions insurance. So can we approve the
Approve
railings
the railing and then,
and also then have a motion to
I think we can.
inquire?
I'm satisfied. My concern is the railings,
Okay.
the cost.
So shall we vote on the original motion of accepting the proposal for the railings for $52,500?
Not to exceed 52,000.
Right. Not to exceed.
We had a second.
We have a second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Do we need a motion to make the errors and omissions question? Or is that just a request?
Yeah, do you want to try that motion again?
Sure. I make a motion that we that we report back at the next meeting, Brian Post's response to the query posed by Katie Morrow regarding the errors and omissions being stricken out of the contract.
Oh, I didn't say that.
No,
That was a member of
Kate,
the public.
a member of the public
Yeah.
said that.
And oh wait, I'll wait for discussion.
Okay.
Do you want me to try again?
No, I've got it. What I have is report back at the next meeting, post response on errors and omissions.
You're right, I don't
Yeah.
think we need more than that
Yeah.
right now.
So I'll second that.
And discussion?
I do want to say that at the time that the contract was presented to my eyes on the previous board, we didn't strike anything out, nothing that, I'm not saying that it's not stricken out, I'm just saying that the board did not do that. That was not something that happened, so.
Be nice if people erase things and put a date in
Yeah,
an initial.
I wasn't even aware of it. So.
Okay, but we'll find out. So, we've had a motion, a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay,
I'm gonna abstain.
abstain? Okay, now we are on to the highway equipment proposal. Mr. Jeremy?
In your packet, there's a sheet with the breakdown of prices on the excavator and the backhoe. Purchase, lease, and Vermont loan programs, breakdowns and the purchase price for each piece of equipment. Breaks down the payments for lease, payments for your loan programs. What I'm proposing is that we take, for the purchase of the excavator, take the Vermont loan program.
It's on the second page. The proposal's on the second page.
Second page, sorry. They will finance us up to $110,000, which leaves us with about $90,000 to put for a down payment. The backhoe I'm proposing we lease, because it's just a 5-year lease plan, and then we own the machine at the end of it. And that's about $34,000 a year. Purchase a new excavator trailer outright for about $18,000. With the initial payments and purchases of the excavator trailer and down payments, that gives us about $164,000 coming out of that $200,000 equipment fund that we started this year. So that gives us a $36,000 remaining that I can either use on smaller equipment replacement as needed throughout the year, or we can roll it into next year's capital fund for future equipment.
The only thing you want to make sure of, Jeremy, is that you, at the end of the budget year, you send in a request to roll that money over. Because right now, it's not in a reserve account, it's just in the general fund. So if you don't,
It was, in the line item, it was stated to go into a reserve fund though.
Yeah, that's right.
okay,
The article, yeah.
That's right.
never mind, you're safe. You're safe.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Jeremy's fiscal year 2025 proposal for the excavator to take the Vermont loan program for the cost of up to $112,000. The backhoe, to lease the backhoe for $34,000. The excavator trailer for up $18,000 of a total equipment cost of $164,000, not to exceed $200,000.
Can I just, a point of correction, that should read 110, not 112,
Okay.
so it should come down by 2,000 the total.
Not, and,
Sorry about that.
and also that whatever balance there is at the end of fiscal year 2025 to roll over into fiscal year 2026.
I second the motion.
Okay, discussion?
Jeremy, I noticed in the I'm sorry, the Vermont loan program, I noticed that there's a deadline of April 15th.
Yes.
Will you be able to make that deadline?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Well, Nick
We're gonna work on that.
has some information and then I'll give to you, Liza.
So this
Okay.
is the.
Yeah, so that-
further, yeah, so it's a very simple, it's a very, straightforward
Well, still, I
application
thought I'd
process.
ask.
Absolutely. In going through the minutes, they
that's
pretty
why
much
we're-
always approved all loan applications, and those should be done by June of the year. That's typically when they hold their meetings.
Okay,
Um,
yes, spring meeting.
Yeah, so really, we just need to have a decision so we can do this by the deadline, but it should be fine.
And I'd also like to note that in the motion, it was to have the $36,000 rolled over. However, in the proposal, it's to roll it over or use for the purchase of smaller equipment as needed.
Correct.
And I believe that we should set some kind of amount for a threshold, for instance. If equipment over, say, $10,000 should be brought to the select board's attention.
Well, we do that anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's
For-
standard practice.
Okay,
Yeah, so, right?
so you would,
Yeah.
we
Yeah, I
would,
can't just.
We would need to approve any purchase.
Exactly, we can't just go up and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna buy this tomorrow.
okay,
And
fine,
not
I
say
didn't
it, so.
understand, thank you for clarifying.
Liza?
I have a question for Jeremy. Does the road department use the excavator and the backhoe 12 months of the year?
The excavator will be used as much as I can possibly use it. The backhoe is a year-round piece of equipment. The backhoe is more of an emergency backup for, in the winter, say our bucket loader goes down, we have something to load the truck. But the backhoe is something that usually is on the road almost every day. Excavator is a piece of equipment we've never had before, but with all the new Vermont MRGP and road erosion stuff that is being required for us to do, this is the reason our current backhoe is in the state that it's in, because it is not the right piece of equipment for doing what we do with it. But I will make sure that machine is running as much as possible, so.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. Andy?
Oh, okay. Looking at the proposal here totaling up to the 164, excuse me, it looks like you're taking the amount of the loan of that 112 or 110 and counting that as being the expenditure.
Right.
Where,
I thought that it was.
No, it
So it
was,
was the payment plus the 90 that we would have to come up
so
with.
it's the one, we haven't figured out, we don't exactly know how the payments are laid. Nick, maybe, is it a monthly or is it an annual?
That I'm not sure on.
So,
Yeah,
that
it's a little
number,
confusing.
so
But it's up
we
to
would
5
have
years.
take $90,000 up front as our down payment, plus I think we based it on like $22,000 for the payments over the year.
so the 112.
That might be where that 112
The
came from.
program only lets you go up to
I understand.
110.
You
Yeah.
can only borrow 110,000, so
So it's 90,000 for the down payment in the first
the
year
first year of
of
payments.
22,000, but
Correct.
it's obligating us both there and in the lease to purchase much more.
Yes.
So when the article was put forth at town meeting for the 200,000, we're actually buying considerably more equipment here than was really authorized.
Yeah.
Considerably.
That's correct.
What was authorized was 200,000 for the purchase of equipment. There was never discussion of how many.
Well, but we're borrowing money and obligating the town on the lease
Yes.
for years, for future years.
Yes.
Which would happen anyways, eventually.
That's a good point.
But it is something that if the town decides not to approve, or if for whatever reason we don't get that money reauthorized in a future year, then we're in a bind where we either have to break out of the lease and whatever those restrictions are, or we kind of lose the equipment.
It
I
looks
thought,
like,
and I can't speak for all the 100 other people that were there, but at town meeting, it seemed like the number was 200,000 that was eventually going to be paid for by taxes.
Yes.
And we're using that basically to leverage it into future years for considerable more money than was approved at that budget. And we're counting that in future years, there will be enough approved in the ongoing budget to cover this. I don't think that's proper. I think we're really exceeding what was authorized. And we're buying equipment that we don't know what we're going to use. I mean, backhoe could make a lot of sense. We also have the option of renting it for $3,700 per month to see how we use it and whether it fits in, as opposed to just jumping in right out of the gate for all of us at once, because we have the 200,000 that was approved. So it doesn't seem like a conservative approach.
On the flip side, Jeremy, I know you've mentioned many times that the backhoe is really in dire need to be replaced. That could be something that is prioritized in this year with the funds that we have approved. And then, as Andy, you were saying, we could lease the excavator, which also has a lease option, or rent the excavator.
There's a rental option.
Rent the excavator, yeah, not lease it, but rent it, and then come back to town meeting next year and see if we can get another authorization to kind of increase our reserve. Because that account was created as a reserve account for equipment. It's not meant for just this year, correct? That's why it was proposed as a reserve account. So theoretically, we should still be looking to add to that year after year to make sure that we have a solid foundation. So maybe there's this.
I also don't want to take the chance of not having the excavator, especially. I know that through a meeting that I had with Jeremy and Connie about the different monies that are offered to the towns on a rolling basis have to do with like best management practices in the ditching. You were touching on that a little bit with the material in the ditches, and you absolutely need an excavator for that process. And if we don't have that equipment, we have to borrow it or whatever it is, we're just not going to be covered. In something that I know that our road crew learned last summer, when we didn't have all the equipment that we needed to fix the flooding issues that we had, there wasn't an excavator in sight. There wasn't a thing that you could rent anywhere in an emergency. And I don't think that we want to live like that. I don't think that works for the town in any way, to have inadequate equipment and have to outsource that. It costs a lot more money, but it also is just not sustainable with the kinds of storms that we've been having.
Jeremy, if you bought the excavator outright, how much?
Somewhere around 170,000.
It's right here on the proposal, 173 for John Deere, 169 for Cat, and 185 for Kubota.
And then we have to purchase a trailer, it's $18,000.
But then you'd be staying within the $200,000 that was voted.
And you'd still have enough money to lease the backhoe.
Or to rent.
To rent the backhoe for, I have to do the math, for X number of months to see how it's used.
Well, we've had a backhoe all along, I know we used it. I mean, it's a
I know, but we're saying where we get the money from.
Is there a proposal that would be like about 40,000 to fix the existing?
Yes, and what they could see what was wrong with it.
Okay, about 48,000.
I mean, basically rebuilding the whole thing. Might as well get it. It's on almost a 20-year-old piece of.
And they said that there was very little guarantee because
Exactly.
the next thing could break, and
Yeah.
so. And one thing that you talked to me about, Jeremy, was getting on a better schedule about maintaining equipment so that we wouldn't end up with equipment that was on its last leg.
Right. Especially with the trucks, we need to start cycling them more often because if you reach a certain age in the truck, they're the ones that take the most beating in the wintertime, It's rough. Plus,
Well, then they lose their value quickly.
they lose their value
at
after a certain number of years. It drops dramatically.
Right.
I mean, most towns that I've talked to have all their trucks on a 7-year cycle, because even though they're really in really good shape, that's when stuff generally starts going wrong. Right now, I have 2 trucks in the fleet that are over 10 years old.
How many miles on them?
Excuse me?
How many miles?
Mileage, well, the International's got 50, but it's been in the shop most of its life because of electrical issues. The other one has 110,000 on it, but mileage doesn't really say anything to the way these trucks get treated. I mean, I don't know if you've been in a plow truck in the wintertime, especially with the last couple of storms, these things take a beating.
So telematics, do you have any experience with that?
Telematics? Never heard of it.
GPS units that measure hours, miles, mile per hour, impacts. The way it is, accelerates, decelerates, gives you a whole lot of different metrics that you can look at as the foreman and say, that truck's working perfectly, or that truck's really seeing a lot of hard work. They're not super expensive. They're fairly common in municipalities.
Certainly something we can look into. Obviously not gonna happen this year, but.
Okay. They're somewhere between $700 and $1,000 per unit. So if you put it on the new excavator, you know how it was being used. I mean, all the equipment, if they had telematics on it, you would know exactly how it's being used, where it is at any point in time. It would be great information for you.
Yeah. I can look into that.
How much?
Somewhere between $700 and $1,000.
$700 and $1,000.
Yes.
Okay, so I thought I heard $700,000. Oh my God.
Yeah, per vehicle per year.
We need to get
We'll get to that.
Is that a yearly cost or is that a one-time cost?
One-time cost.
So is there a way to?
But you start looking into that and you need to have data extrapolation. Who's gonna sit there? If Jeremy's out on the road, who's gonna sit there and extrapolate that? We've run machines for hundreds of years as human beings. I guarantee you that guy can find out a hydraulic leak in a second. And it's not about observing or monitoring the machines at that point because there's different storms, there's different qualities and capabilities of work. It's about, yes, having accountability for the machine being used and the hours put on it, which I'm sure is already in place, so you get that fluid changes at the right time. But having telematics, we're sitting here pinching numbers on the silliest stuff about renting the vehicles we need or buying the vehicles we need to solve the problems in the wintertime, which you yourself have complained to me about because you can't get down your hill, Bob. And we need the machines. We buy the machines and we give the highway department the money to do their job. It's not costing us anything extra. They've already come up with the $200K in the budget as was voted upon at the town meeting to do so. Let's give them the vehicles so we can get down the mountains. But we don't need to get an extra $100K on a telematic thing when he already knows where the leak is because he knows it was pushed hard on the
It was $1,000, and Liza,
I've just added the lowest figures for these three items, and it's $326,000. How do you skew $200,000 to purchase $326,000 of equipment? And Nick, I take issue with something you said a little while back about voting the money in and always having the money there when people are talking about the possibility of renting, and I heard what you said, Katie, and I know that's a possibility that when you need it the most, it's not there. But are we gonna have these storms every winter? Are we gonna have winters like this every winter? We don't know that either. I mean, the whole thing is a crapshoot. But realistically, you can't spend money you don't have. So something's gotta be.
and that's why we're discussing this.
Leasing option.
And
Yeah.
I'm 100% on board with what you're saying, Liza. I was really only saying is if we were to go this route, that is what would have to happen, but that's not really something you can bet on.
And you also
So
said that it might not be approved, and then what would we do?
Exactly.
So you were weighing both sides.
So that's where we have to kind of do like the puzzle pieces, is how do we get the pieces of equipment that we need with the funds that aren't enough to cover both pieces of equipment outright. It's probably gonna have to involve renting at some point for one of these, buying the other one outright, and then we'll have to figure it out at another point.
I did
That's
hear
not very
discussion,
costly.
and tell me if I'm wrong, about buying the excavator outright at one of these $173,000 prices, and then using the balance of the money to rent the backhoe.
That's what it was suggested.
Yeah, it was part of the discussion.
I was gonna ask Jeremy, given Andy's observation and Nick's confirmation that we are encumbering over the $200,000 amount. What is your suggestion for having the equipment you need while not surpassing the $200,000 that was voted?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What is your suggestion for having the equipment you need without surpassing the $200,000 that was voted and approved at the town meeting?
As far as choosing one, you ever asking me?
What plan, but keeping within the 200,000?
Can you
That
offer
wasn't
a
his
strategy?
proposal.
Right,
His proposal was something else.
right. So I don't think you have a plan to do that. Right.
I wanted to speak to something quick that, to reference the discussion of Nick a minute ago. Last year, Sherwood and I met with a large group of municipalities in the area, in our county, I believe it was, with the VLCT. This has come up a bunch of times. And that was an opportunity through the VLCT to discuss with other towns how they do what they do, the possibility of sharing resources if you needed to, things like that. The biggest thing that came out of that meeting was that these municipalities around us maintain their road equipment, because we all sort of agreed that the roads are huge and a huge part of our budget, if not the biggest. And they are able to maintain and keep the equipment, the schedule of equipment that they need, because they put in this fund, like the one that we did this year at town meeting in the article. So we discussed that all year last year, the possibility of having an article at town meeting to start this fund for these highway trucks, because we knew that there had been many years of deferred maintenance that was, you know, not on Jeremy, he wasn't here then. So how do we begin that process of making sure we have the equipment that we need so that our road crew is safe, so that our roads are safe and our citizens are safe? And everyone resoundingly said, I cannot believe that you don't already have this, basically. Yeah. So we said, we're gonna start from scratch. It'll take us time to build up if the town does vote this in year after year, but that was a large takeaway of that meeting with our surrounding towns on how they're able to deal with inflation and the budgets that they have currently and still have the trucks that they need to do what they need to do.
So you're saying you thought that $200,000 wouldn't be spent 100%?
No, I'm saying that we had to start.
Yeah.
And the best way to start that process and that conversation was to bring it to town meeting. And we couldn't ask them for perpetuity or anything like that, but we knew that we had to start some sort of conversation about having enough money for the road crew to either build it up over time or to spend what we needed for the year. And we couldn't be taking it directly out of the budget immediately. Right. It had to be voted on by the whole town, and that's what we did.
The town has not had a capital equipment fund ever.
Ever.
So this is all new.
This is all new, and we had to start somewhere, and that's where we started.
Liza and then Andy.
Has the town of Townshend spoken with other municipalities about the possibility of co-leasing or renting equipment? I know that Brookline rents or leases equipment. I've talked to the town clerk. And so it seems like that might be a less expensive
We are
route.
talking about renting right now in this discussion. My feeling is about co-owning or co-renting is that when you have an emergency, every other town is having similar emergencies, floods, snowstorms that are horrendous, and everybody needs their equipment.
And then there's, well, who broke this? Who's not doing this? And, you know, they're fighting over time. You know,
Who's getting paid overtime because they're out at 3 in the morning because then the equipment became late that day, you know, like.
Yeah.
My dad has been in my position in the town for almost 50 years, so I've had a lot of conversations with him about this stuff, and because when this whole thing started, you know, towns trying to upgrade their equipment, they looked into that, and basically every other town that he asked said, no, we're not doing it because we don't want to share. Nobody wants to be responsible for somebody else's, you know, mess up or whatever. So there's just towns aren't doing it. Currently we're working with Brookline to share time together, help each other out. You know, maybe he can come with his piece of equipment and help us if we have a big project, and we can do the same for him.
But your men would still be using our equipment.
We stay in our own piece of equipment. It's a logistical nightmare. Because then you know, there's a lot that this previous crews have neglected that I'm eager to get going on. And there's a lot of work, and I keep those people, as long as there's no snow on the ground, the roads aren't frozen, we're gonna be working.
Andy, you were next.
2 points. One was to ask, because I think the excavator it's a good idea. It's different than what many towns have done. I don't believe most of the neighboring towns around here have
Every one of them does.
They do now?
They do.
Okay.
They need it.
Can I stand corrected?
Every one of them does it, you know.
That they actually own the next
The only one that I do know that doesn't is Townshend at the time. But
Oh, okay. Thank you. The other point was looking at the reserve fund or equipment fund. We're back to kind of an age-old discussion in town, in town meeting and select board meetings, is do you buy it when you need it and borrow the money then? Or do you finance, raise taxes on an ongoing basis for whatever the physical depreciation is? If you say you want to replace the equipment every 7 years, 1/7 of that value for each piece of equipment every year, and then you have built up the fund at the time, and you build that into the regular operating budget. That would be kind of a use of an equipment fund. Or are you raising taxes that aren't needed at that point and wait until you need it? You can get arguments both ways, but I want to say that's kind of a discussion that can go round and round.
I'd like to point out that Katie fortunately reminded us that the $200,000 that was voted at the town meeting was to begin a new capital equipment fund to begin it. And inherent in that is an anticipation that that fund will be added to in the future. And so I think it's logical to anticipate that with the lease program, that monies will be continually added to this fund, and therefore the monies will be there. And it's not just a matter of blindly encumbering future select boards to approve additional funding.
And having said that, if we buy the excavator outright and rent the backhoe, we're not encumbering anybody. We're giving up a 2% loan, which is kind of sweet money, but it's still, the interest is still money. And if we pay for the excavator outright and rent the backhoe, then we can let the taxpayers decide at town meeting next year.
But you also don't have the mandates from the state.
Thank you.
We also don't have the mandates from the state that say we need to accomplish these tasks by trenching and doing all this, replacement work, and they can't do it with one machine.
No, I'm saying too, Sean. I'm saying if we buy the excavator outright and rent the backhoe.
But when we need it, when do we get it? If someone else owns it?
No,
If we own it and
we're renting it on an ongoing basis.
the lease option makes.
Yeah, we would have it in our possession the whole month.
So you're gonna spend more money on a month-to-month lease because it's a piece of equipment that I need in the garage here for 12 months of the year.
But is it $2,800 a month, every month?
So that number is, yes, I believe so.
So that was, I'm not actually proposing that, I'm just bringing that up for discussion.
It would cost $30,600 to rent the backhoe for a year in order to be able to bring it up at the next town meeting. The John Deere is $173,000, so it would still go over the $200,000.
But I personally would be fine if it went over by $3,000,
It would go over.
No, so.
I don't want to forget here that there's also an excavator trailer involved in this.
Right.
Which, Jeremy, do you want to speak about that? What it's important piece?
We have the experience, we need a piece of the trailer to move it around.
Yeah.
Trucks. We have trucks. Trucks are all set, so.
Yes, Bob.
You may not have to spend 173,000, maybe you spend 100,000 and finance 73,000. So there's a variety of options, I would think, on the table.
But if you finance, aren't you doing what Andy's suggesting, you're committing to?
Multi-year.
We're owning a piece of equipment that we're gonna come back to the taxpayers and say, we already have this, you need to raise this money so we can keep it.
Right.
The lease does the same thing.
Yeah, but the rent doesn't.
The rental.
Yeah. the monthly
So-
renting.
Okay.
That's what discussion is about.
Yeah.
To rent, to buy the excavator and the trailer, and to rent the backhoe would be roughly $225,000. So it would be $25,000 over the $200,000.
Good bargain, I can get it on.
Yes,
Say, the backhoe goes down right now, we have to rent a new one tomorrow. Do we need, what kind of approval needs to happen there? Just a select board approval? Or is it a town approval? I mean,
probably we should talk about that after so it doesn't muddy up.
okay.
I understand your question, and it's a valid question, but it really isn't about purchasing or renting, even though if we were renting new equipment, we wouldn't have that problem. But let's figure this out first. So, Connie, what was our motion?
The motion, Katie made a motion to approve Jeremy's proposal as written on page 2 with the correction of the $2,000.
And does anybody want to amend that motion?
I think
Or will we have to vote on it first? We've discussed it, but I don't know that we've come to any.
Yeah.
you could make an amendment, but then you have to
So,
attach it to that motion.
so you're saying it would be neater if we approved it or disapproved it and then made a new motion? But I don't know what the motion.
Yeah.
Well, given that this was, the 200,000 was intended as the beginning of a capital equipment fund, I believe we can anticipate further investment, and therefore it's more, not judicious, but it's more economical in the long run to do the lease, since we would own the backhoe at the end of the lease period.
I agree.
So are you saying that you agree with going with the motion?
Yep.
I'm
Okay.
ready to vote.
So shall we bring it to a vote? Would you read that again, please, so that we know what we're voting on?
Okay, so I have to admit, I did not get all of Katie's verbiage,
I've read out.
but pretty much it's a
Okay.
motion to approve Jeremy's proposal as written on page 2 with the correction of 110,000 versus 112,000 on the loan.
Okay. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? I'm going to abstain myself, but,
Okay.
so the ayes have it.
Thanks,
Do you-
Jeremy.
Jeremy, you do a wonderful job, thank you. Do you want to ask that question now about what happens tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's, I just need some clarification. I mean, say if there was something catastrophic and we still needed to rent that equipment, and we're gonna, does that need town approval for temporary rental, or can we just go rent?
I would assume you'd have to get in touch with Connie/Selectboard and,
If he takes it out of his own budget, it's already been approved, right, twice. You know, it was approved by the select board, and it was approved by town meeting. I would set a cap on how much of it to bring back to the board. You know, if it exceeds $10,000 or something like that on an emergency basis. But you give him a budget to take care of what he needs to take care of. Let him take care of it.
So you mean that's already in his budget in the town
That's right.
report, not the 36,000
Right,
overage here?
Right. I think if you let him use his budget the way that most companies do it, and just put a cap on how much money that he can spend without coming back to the board. So if the thing comes in at $15,000, well, the board may want to look at, okay, where's that money coming from? What's not going to get done? That type of stuff. But for $3,000,
It's called a single purchase limit. We have it on our postal credit cards. I can't buy a $48,000 car because it will take the things, but I can pay $15,000 for an air conditioner. It's a single purchase limit.
Okay, so does that answer your question for now?
For now.
And we can talk about it and you can talk with your liaison. So, okay, where are we on here? So we are up to new business, the rules of procedure for select board meetings. What we did was we called Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns, and they gave us a, they called it a procedures. It wasn't Robert's Rules of Order. What did they call it here? Rules of Procedure for Municipal Public Bodies. And in my opinion, I'd be happy to have the public look at this. In my opinion, the Robert's Rules of Order was a little weighty and didn't apply specifically to select board or town bodies as much as the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns did. So I'd be happy to share this with some of the public and come back to it next time. But I don't know what the board feels.
I spent some time reading through both of these, and excuse me, the model rules of procedures that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is customized to this type of meeting. For instance, in the section on voting and motions, there are 20 items. In Robert's Rules of Order, there are so many they have to, and so complex, they have to be expressed in graphs and charts. Very, very nuanced and very, very general. In the Vermont League of Cities and Towns model procedures, there's a section on public participation, a section on minutes, and in general, it's tailored for select board meetings. So, in my opinion, would be well advised to use the Vermont League of Cities and Towns model procedures.
the biggest thing you need to make sure of is that if somebody comes here to speak, that they're heard. Yeah, whatever you do, and all of that, in any of those things. And there are other rules from other towns, other cities, other states that are totally different from what you're talking about here. The league does a really good job at flushing this stuff out and making it understandable. So I think it's a good idea to go with something like that rather than Roberts. Roberts is a nightmare. I mean, if you figure the Congress has to have a person sitting up front, and that's all they do, the parliamentarian, is deal with that damn thing. Yeah, you can't get anything done, and there's 5 people for 1,300 person town. Roberts is ridiculous.
So where does that stand? Should we consider or should we adopt the VLCT?
Would you want to table it and have people review it? Have more
Well,
time?
that's what I'm saying by consider.
I already thought that we do go based on the VLCT guidance.
I don't know that we've ever adopted it.
There's never been an official adoption.
I mean, they're a great resource. They have so many things on their website to just explain it all to you, break it all down, FAQs, everything. I mean, I'm on there all the time. Whenever I have a question, whenever I want to bring anything up, anything like that, I completely go to the VLCT first. And they are very easy to get in touch with. Humans will answer the phone. And actually, I was just sitting in a webinar this morning, and you could schedule with the people giving the webinar for a consultation if you wanted to. I just find them very accessible, and they've already pretty much hashed out our bylaws for us, figured out that they have, they put it in language that's easy for everyone to understand, so.
Speaking of easy to understand, I read this, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and could understand it readily. I read through the simplified Robert's Rules of Orders, and despite having a PhD in English, still couldn't tell you what it says.
So am I hearing that somebody should make a motion to adopt the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns now?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns template for governance.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All right, we'll have a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, any abstentions? Did you say aye?
Good idea.
Okay. Then further new business is open bids for repair of Bridge 17. And they are right here.
And just to click, just for folks, if you have this in the packet, but the bids are part of a FEMA grant. In other words, we would go to FEMA once we selected the bid, and FEMA would cover 75%. Under some circumstances that I'm not entirely clear on, it could be as much as 90%, but it would be at least 75% of the cost of the bids. So you need to open them. We have 4. So we have 3.
Bridge is 17.
Please.
The
Yes.
section of
Just above Barbara.
Barber and
It's
Webster.
actually the culvert, just above, but it's on the map as a bridge. During the last couple of storms, the outlet side of the concrete header has been undermined underneath the road quite a ways, so it needs to be repaired.
That's the new concrete. You're talking above Barber Road?
Up past Brattleboro Road, at the corner where you go underneath the power line,
Yep.
there's that big, I think it's either a 5 or 6 foot culvert.
You're talking the culvert, okay.
The culvert.
Not a bridge, okay.
It's listed as a bridge, I don't know why, but
Because just above there is a
Open it.
concrete box culvert. That's a real bridge.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, and the scope of work is to repair the outlet side of the culvert header due to undermining of the footing. This proposal is from Hunter Excavating. It's submitted to, I say, the customer. The customer is the town. The scope of work is to repair the outlet side of the culvert heading due to undermining of footing, and there's some bullet points. The total amount for this is $26,400. That's Hunter Excavating. It was the time at the Oscars.
Did they include their certificate of insurance?
I have multiple copies of their insurance. Oh.
Yes, they did.
It's supposed to be in there.
Yeah, it has to be in each packet.
$26,400. And this is from, okay, I don't think this is a bid. Connie, I don't believe this is a bid. This is about a tax bill.
Here, don't I just grab it?
But you can pass that down, Connie. This is from A.S. Clark and Sons of New Fame, and the project, well, they delineate in great detail, or some detail, more than I would want to read, but basically it is to cover the scope of work required. They bid $35,540 to repair the outlet and the bridge end of Bridge 17. That's A.S. Clark and Sons. And they say they can get it done before October 1st, and they have included their certificate of liability insurance.
Did Hunter say when they could,
There's a mandatory finish date.
It's a mandatory finish date,
was that October 1st?
yes.
September 30th.
Yes. Was that a bid, Connie?
What did you say?
Was that? I can read fast, but. This is a bid from Why Not Work, that's W-I-N-O-T, not Why Not Work. And it also lists in fair amount of detail the scope of work, but it does say to repair the culvert header that has been undermined by brook. Their bid is $9,961. And hold on, wait for it. They include their liability insurance coverage.
And Connie, did you want to say anything about how this was getting paid for?
Yep. And then I would recommend that, I think what Shirley has done in the past is ask if the select board has any dealings with anybody and ask Jeremy his opinion. So just to be clear.
Is that all?
Yes, sir.
So just to be clear, we have a FEMA projects that we are applying for federal reimbursement. We had this project as one of the 7 projects, but it had not been completed. Like all the other projects were already completed. The cost was in, we submitted it to FEMA, and he pointed out that we had not, this is the one project that we had not completed. So we assumed that, okay, we have to withdraw it. And our FEMA representative said, no, don't withdraw. You can still keep it in, but you've got to get the process rolling. And so that is why he suggested that we get bids in so that we can continue to keep it into the projects that we're asking for federal reimbursement. Federal reimbursement is from FEMA is 75%, but there is a bill or whatever, the Biden administration is currently reviewing whether or not this disaster in Vermont deems it eligible to go to 90%. They haven't made that ruling yet. They did in 2021. They made that ruling to bump it up to 90, and we received 90% reimbursement. So minimally, it's 75% reimbursement for this project.
Okay.
Well, in light of the dramatic difference in the one bid, it seems to me that we would be advised to get Jeremy's detailed opinion about whether this
Guys,
sorry,
that's okay, go ahead.
as to whether the scope of work as described in greater detail is sufficient.
Right, I would like your opinion on that because one is so much.
I need to look at it.
Obviously.
Of course. So,
Do you want me to hand it to you so we can?
yes,
Jeremy, there was a pre-bid meeting at the culvert on this, so everyone knows what they're, okay, thank you.
While he's doing that, when the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, does things with these disasters, typically it falls just that if you qualify for 75% of your losses, then the state kicks in up to 17.5% of the loss. And that's where you need to have the LEMP, you need to have the hazardous mitigation program, plan, and there's 2 other things, both planning type things. One is the town plan, the other one is the floodplain administrator. And if you have all 4 of those, then you can fill in that 17.7%. Which leaves it at, 3.5% we have to come up with. So that's why those things are important, especially in disasters. we've been lucky that they've only cost us $300,000 apiece in the last two. But if we get one that, you know, tops out at $1 million, $1.5 million, at 17% is going to be more, more interesting figure. So.
The hazard mitigation plan is in the process of being
In the
updated.
process, yeah.
And I don't know about the flood.
He's on the list to be appointed.
You currently have a floodplain plan that has been approved. With the new FEMA redoing the flood insurance rate maps, it will have to be redone within the next 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
And the administrator's up on that appointment list. I think it's Joe Winrich, right?
Correct.
Do we want to continue with business?
Jeremy, do you have like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes estimation?
Well, yes, we have one more read.
Okay.
5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes.
Okay, shall we go on to the fire alarm system? Well, do we need to table this for a moment?
There's no motion.
There's no motion? Okay. So we've just been having open discussion. Okay, so we'll go on to fire alarm system for garage. There is a letter from a Michael Blase about giving, I'll just read it, I guess, reference fire panel replacement. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to move your monitoring into the new technology. Over the past 10 years, what was once called POTS, plain old telephone service, lines are quickly going away. Based on research, the main fire alarm panel is an Edwards ESL. I recommend we change the panel to a new IFP-75 fire panel with built-in internet connection. The addressable portion of system will allow for expansion in the future. Control panel, 2 zone modules and 3 monitor modules installed in the amount of $2,089.00. So,
This is for the town hall, correct?
no,
For the garage.
For the garage.
Is the date a typo, or did we receive this in October?
Probably Sweden onto it. How this came about was Warren Beatty came into the office last week with this quote, and I was hoping he'd be here tonight to do some explanation, but I couldn't make it. He said that there's been discussion about the fact that the garage doesn't have a fire alarm system, as the town hall does. So, but there's been a lot of discussion about it, not a lot of movement. So this came in and he's probably had it for a while, and he just wanted to.
and I believe it does have a fire system, but it's felt that it's not adequate.
It does, and it isn't. It hasn't worked right since they put it in. We had to put in a separate phone line just to keep it from failing, to send out an alarm. So, yeah, it's been a problem for quite a while.
So is this the only quote that's been received? It was, I take it that Warren did not seek
I don't
this
think
quote?
it was put out to bid, it's just, Countryside is the company that does town hall.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's what.
Yeah, and they're the same
Gotcha.
one for the
And is everybody satisfied with what happens here?
Haven't pulled the fire alarm recently?
fire alarm constantly goes off.
Right.
That panel out there, you could come in here for a meeting and it'll buzz the entire meeting. No, it's not adequate. This one's not adequate, and neither is the one up at the highway garage.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Countryside Alarms replacement of the control panel, 2 zone modules and 3 monitor modules at the town garage for the amount of $2,089.
I'd say that's a quote from.
We have to second it first.
Do we have a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay, yeah. Are you?
Go ahead, Sherwood.
Okay.
I think because there have been problems, I don't want to go too deep into problems, but I think we should research other companies to see what we can get. Yes, Countryside is in this area, but I'm really not satisfied that they're gonna do what we can do, or what we need. We don't have a plan for this place. We don't have a plan for the other one. I think we need to have plans if we're gonna spend money on it to get it done right, not have to worry whether we've got, $2, $3, $4 million worth of equipment up that highway garage and it goes up in smoke. So,
With our new grader in it.
Yeah.
Our new backup next week.
So,
Greatest this year.
so we have a motion and a second and discussion.
Amend the motion to request more
I agree,
bids.
I was gonna say what Sherwood said. I was gonna say that we need to research other options, and I also don't think it should be, we have, T1 cable, fiber cable running all around, but when those things shut down, we have no communication, so someone who has a bi-paired, a Wi-Fi or an internet connection, but also still maintains the phone line capability is something that I would say is most important to the new bid, or the new, the new server, because phone lines still work when storms happen around Townsend, but the internet doesn't. And even the fiber out front can go down in, a circumstance of flooding or anything like that. So I would pay attention to the new companies coming in and see what they can offer for low-end communication and also high-end communication, because the low end is the one that gets us through the disasters.
Connie, how should we do this? Should we let the motion fail and re-motion, or can we amend it?
Yeah, I
What-
personally would have voted down. And then-
Okay. Okay. So is discussion done, and we'll vote on the motion on the... Oh, sorry, Andy.
Not directly related to the motion, directly related to having a fire panel. It is a requirement you all should be aware of, that you do have to have it inspected every year or every 2 years.
They had, for town hall, they had.
That'll be the same
Yeah.
for any fire alarm that's there, because that's going to be part of
And
the
they
insurance
charge.
requirement.
Big job.
And it's a couple $100, but we do have to make sure it's done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's vote on this motion. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, so the motion fails. And who wants to,
I don't think you have to make a motion now, you just
we
have.
just ask Connie to
Yes,
get bids?
Yeah.
Okay.
How are we doing on the bids?
They all, as far as the process goes, they're all the same. I think the difference with the low bid is material being used. The two higher ones, they were gonna place concrete underneath, and Tanner's came in with just trying to pack stone underneath there. Which is more of a temporary repair than a permanent one, so. If we are getting reimbursed, we should probably go for the better repair. We've used Hunter a lot in the past, and he does really good work. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
What was Hunter's price tag?
26.
Okay. Make a motion to accept the bid for Hunter, what is it, excavation?
Hunter's,
Yeah, in the amount of
26,400.
26,400.
Seconded.
All right, any further discussion? So we'll have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we got it.
Thank you for the quick analysis.
The use of town hall, Leland and Gray players.
May I interject here?
Sure.
Elenka, Katie Morrow and I are reviewing the town policy on the use, for the use of the town common and also for the town hall. So this would be falling under the current old policy we're working on it and plan to have something for the board within the next meeting or two.
I'd like to make a motion to allow the Leland and Gray players to use the town hall May 29th to June 2nd on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 3 to 5, with show dates being May 31st and June 1st in the evenings from 7 to 9.
Seconded.
Discussion?
I noticed that there's no liability insurance coverage. Is that something they've already given us?
Covered by the school.
Oh,
And they
thank you.
gave it the last time.
And yeah, they just did this here, and it was really great. Yeah, well, I just wanted to say that anyway.
The previous one, they had to do that one.
Yeah, this came in the printed packet today. It wasn't an email, so maybe.
Somebody's decision is gonna be upstairs.
That looks like this one.
This one.
Yeah.
The second pass. It's okay, that's
Oh, is
fine.
it?
That's fine, she clarified.
And then we have,
Wait, we didn't vote on it.
yep, so we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
All right.
Has discussion been completed?
Any discussion, Laura?
I'm just wondering, like, there's been all this discussion about the previous policy, and it's been going on for a very long time, and I looked it over, and the people that, it was done in 2018, just before the pandemic and all that stuff went down, and the select board at that time spent a lot of time, thought, and energy on coming up with a policy, and they went about it all the way, posted it, asked for public discussion, the whole routine. And I don't see anything wrong with it. So I'm wondering why there's been such a big thing about the policy.
Evidently, and this coming from someone who's new, evidently there's been a lot of inconsistencies and lack of clarity in the fees and the waiving of fees. And there's also thought that the forms could be greatly simplified, and that the fees could be clarified, and that doing so would advance the purpose of the policies, which is to encourage the use. So it's really a matter of simplifying and clarifying to make the forms and the policy more, a warmer invitation to use the common and the town hall.
The fees are very clear, though. It was very clear in the original policy.
It's thought, well, this is a work in progress, and I don't have an answer to that question right now.
If I may, I think it was also a question around when folks are requesting to use the town hall on an ongoing basis, and how often that fee should be assessed, if it's every single time the town hall is used or not. And I think that's where the point of clarity was missing in the way the policy is now. Correct? Yeah.
Yep. Lies.
Are the fees being waived for the school to put on this production?
At this moment, I believe so.
Well, the last time they used it, it was, but you would be deciding on the current request. But the last request, they waived the fees.
But we have a motion on the floor to allow this, but we have no fee connected to it. So I would think we're gonna do status quo and not charge these people. I'm not sure if I'm correct.
It's a school function. It's a school function that, if you think about it, we pay taxes to the school. So we're going to charge somebody for a fee that we're going to ultimately end up paying ourselves. That's where it makes no sense. You got to get people in town who pay taxes, pay a pretty good chunk of taxes, and if they want to have a birthday party here for their 100-year-old person who actually worked in here until he was 97 years old.
And that's why we're going over the policy, but what I was talking about is the one on the table right now.
Yeah, but this is where some of the confusion comes from, is the board has the right to waive these fees at any time. And that didn't set well. So here we are again.
Okay, and here we are again.
And that's why the policy
And that's,
will be looked at.
we'll look at it with a smile on our face.
So I will say, it
Goodness.
doesn't, I don't know if maybe there's some other outside information, but on the application that they submitted, there's no, whether they're paying a fee or not, or requesting a waiver. So
Correct.
It's,
Usually
In my
with,
opinion.
usually with the school, they don't put that on there.
Okay.
Unless it's something, like there was one group, that we contribute to that wanted to have an event here. And they specifically requested it because they were doing things related to the town. That's where they'll come through. They're not really consistent when they're asking.
So, Katie's motion is on the floor. Shall we vote on it? Have we had enough discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll go up onto Green Up Day celebration.
So the motion, I did not cover the issue of the fee. It just approved their request to use.
Correct.
And usually, and in the past, what has happened is that there's either another motion to waive it or not waive it. So right now, they're,
Usually what happened was the waiver of the fee was adopted in the original motion.
or if
So
it
now-
wasn't, another one was.
Yeah. You also need permission to sign it.
I can make another motion. I'd like to make a motion to waive the fee for the LNG players for their use of the town hall on May 22nd to June 2nd, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 3 to 5. Shows on May 31st and June 1st in the evening from 7 to 9.
Also, there's one more addition.
And
Giving,
to allow Ally Evans to sign off on it on behalf of the rest of the board.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we'll move on to LNG players. They would,
That was the point.
No, no,
Just
we're
like-
on Green Up Day.
oh, Green Up Day. Yep, turn the page, Ally. So we're on to Green Up Day, which is the 4th of May. They would like to clean our community of all roadside garbage and come and celebrate here from 10:30 to 2 p.m. And
I'd like to make a motion to allow the Leland and Gray event of Green Up Day celebration on May 4th from 2024 from 10:30 to 2 at the town hall, waiving the fee and allowing Ally to sign on behalf of all of us.
second.
okay, all those any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, then we have the new business again, a dance practice by Paul Patus, one of our Route 35 residents. He wants to do Wednesday evenings from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And he gives to us an insurance copy of his homeowner's policy.
I have a question about this, but I can wait till discussion if you like.
Okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to put it on the floor?
I would make the motion to approve Paul Patus's request to use the town hall for dance practice Wednesday evenings from 7 to 8:30 p.m.
Second. For discussion.
Okay.
My question is, I think that last meeting, when it was asked if Tai Chi could happen here, our biggest question was, how long is that happening for? With the Leland and Gray players, something that we appreciated about that was that we had the set dates, so we knew how often it was gonna happen, when it was gonna start, and when it was gonna end. I think that it's hard to know you know, in being fair with other people also renting the town hall on future Wednesdays or whatever date it is. I think without a start date and an end date, not to say that they couldn't then request use again for another start date to an end date, but I would possibly table this to and ask Connie to reach out to them to find out how long this is going to go on for.
I believe any legal agreement, you need an end date.
Yeah,
you know,
we just can't
so-
do Wednesdays forever.
Forever, yeah.
There's no
And-
mention of whether there's it says rental agreement, but there's no mention of the fee.
And we don't know if they're going to pay us anything or going to charge anything. You know, it's one thing if it's a townsperson wanting to get together for health reasons to have dance classes, but it's another thing if it's a business.
How did
So-
we get to, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know how we got two different forms.
I asked Linda that, she said she must, that must be it.
Okay.
The other issue with this is whether the insurance covers, he needs to have a rider and we need to see that
Well,
within the contract.
Doesn't say anything.
It doesn't say anything
Doesn't
on
say
this.
liability.
So we can ask him about why he felt this was adequate.
Yeah, he needs to have a rider for this specific event.
That would generally be acceptable. It says what his liability limits are.
It does. Do you have the paperwork?
For the structure, the dwelling, personal property, loss of use. It doesn't have anything about liability.
I
And my
remember-
understanding is that it should say the town of Townshend. And this is what VLCT said, that,
The named insured.
yeah.
Well, it says personal liability, each occurrence
On
$500,000,
the property,
but,
on his property.
On his property.
so,
That's not true. Andy just made a good point, though, if it's commercial, it might be different. So getting some clarification from his agent is worthwhile.
yeah.
And I know that residents in the past that have used the town hall, we actually had to turn them down until they wanted to not purchase the insurance and because it was something they had to add on to their homeowner's insurance or their business insurance, if I remember correctly, and they wanted the answer first and there was some muddiness there and they said that we have to have it. But I do think that it was, what we were asking that person to do last year was to get something more specific than just their than something like this homeowner's policy.
Named insured would do that.
And that was an add-on that
would
that
be-
they had to do, a temporary add-on.
Yep.
Okay.
Alan,
Yeah.
Just want to clarify that Wednesdays, the planning commission does meet on Wednesdays in that time period. Now, we're downstairs usually, and I assume this is the upstairs they're talking about. And,
How loud is it going to be?
it depends what the clock and of course, AA is here, I think 6 to 7.
6 to 7,
7? 6 to 7, okay.
and you're 7 to 8, right?
We're 7 to whatever.
Let me finish, Andy, and then I'll go to you.
Just, make sure that we don't have a conflict, that's all.
Yeah.
And he has been ballroom dancing in the past, I've known, so if that's the case, he probably has soft shoes and going around like that, but the parking might be a problem.
Well, that's not.
So, Liz,
That's what I was gonna point out. Years ago, Paul and Andy Langsberg maybe used to give dance classes. It was
Carlton
a
Smith.
specific
yeah.
time frame, but yeah, they did it at the high school in the gym, which was quite appropriate.
Do you think this is dance classes? This says dance practice. Do you think there's gonna be members of the public coming
If
or?
we're having Connie
Yeah.
get more information, we
So
can
one
figure
person,
that out.
20 people.
So I make a motion that we ask Connie to seek out further information about this.
You don't want to make a motion.
Yeah, I think I made a
Just
motion.
as
We have a motion on the floor which can fail or be tabled, right?
Right, and I think I made a suggestion to table.
And then we'll ask Connie to.
Ask about the clogs.
so just so we're clear, the board has decided to table this request until further research is been done.
Yes.
like a date. It doesn't even say when it starts, it just says Wednesdays. Is it next Wednesday? Is it? Yes, Andy?
Just a point of order here, I know that we're talking about rules. If you're gonna table it, there usually has to be a vote to table it.
Okay. And did you make that motion to table it, or you just mentioned it?
I suggested we table it,
Okay.
and I didn't make a motion.
Okay.
Because I had a motion on the floor.
Okay. So, would anybody like to make that motion?
Sure, I make a motion that we table the consideration of the request to the rent the town hall for dance practice by Paul Paytas.
Second.
And any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. That is our last item of business. Our next scheduled meeting is the 23rd at 6 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.